dance party for the unqualified countdown.
Yo, that was fire. I'm digging it straight out the gates.
Right? Gets you like pumped up for the conversation. Like, it's going to be this deep, something.
Oh, I'm digging it. Thank you for bringing me into this wonderful adventure. What are we doing here today?
These are great questions. Don't ask hard questions like right as we've started. Okay, you got to give us a minute to like do the thing. My first question is more important. What is this whole paired thing we have happening?
Yo, so it apparently is working, but we are live on multiple LinkedIn channels as well as any others that you've got rolling on your end. But Chelsea's hosting the stream and running things on her end, but we are live on my channel as well as hers. So Restream has added a pairs feature, which means now that your guests that you're bringing on, you can now sync their channels to their socials, and now essentially double the reach.
double the fun, double the here. Since you're here, I'm just gonna say that this whole time. Like, hey, since you're here and you know all the things, I tried to respond to Jackie and instead blocked her.
Oh,
how do I unblock her on Twitch? These are like, I'm gonna have to figure that out. So Jackie, I love you, and I'm sorry that I just did the thing that I did, and I didn't mean it.
Maybe hop over to LinkedIn. Whoops.
I'm sorry, and I love you. If you're still here, I'm gonna figure out how to fix it. I swear.
Oh, I love it.
Oh boy, now I'm talking over here. Look.
Oh, welcome to the party, folks.
Welcome to the party. Thanks for hanging out. What's up, William? Hey, Mary. Ed. Look, Elise. Elise. I don't know. I'm terrible with names. You're joining from Travis's side, so that's fancy. But we are here to discuss how unqualified we are. I've already discussed and like actively shown my unqualifications because I blocked my bestie and like, I don't know what happened right out. Like we start and then I'm blocking people I love. I don't know how it happens. It just does. So I apologize for that, Jackie. I love you. I'll send you something later. Do you like cookies? Cookies? Okay. But we are going to talk about how unqualified we are to do the things in which we do. And I'm hanging out today with like super producer, cult leader, amazing background, human, beautifully shaped head, Travis. Is that how you that's like your whole introduction line, right?
That seems to be the one-liner most people go with. The bald guy with the mustache, or they go with the LinkedIn headline. I'll take it. I'll take any of the above.
Okay, I mean I like it. Look, Jackie's still leaving comments in Twitch. I can see them over here, but I can't see them in here. So I'll figure that out. So Travis, if you were to introduce yourself, how would you do that?
I'm getting better at answering this question, but it's still a ridiculous one. Just because my journey has been so far and in so many different lanes. And each time I'm fully convinced that like, that's my lane and like that's where I belong. And then 6 months later, 6 years later, whole different world. So recently, post-pandemic era, I've come into the role of a multimedia producer. So this is the first time all of my prior experiences, my skills that I've developed and learned over the years, and now personal interests are finally coming to a convergence point, essentially helping others build their ideas into reality, whether it's a live stream, a podcast, virtual events, anything in that process, that adventure of creating media and content. I help others bring those ideas to life.
And just to clarify, and for your business purposes, Travis does not create my things. So whatever shenanigans you see on my world, know that Travis was not responsible for that. And if you were to hire Travis, you would have less shenanigans than I have. Just like disclaimer.
Oh, love it.
So that everyone knows. Hire Travis. You'll get less of whatever I do over here. So that's cool. What's up, Laura? Hey, Andrew. Thanks for hanging out with us today. So, when I was writing the post about what we're going to talk about today, I liked what you said about how, like, just as soon as you're like, ooh, I figured it out, I'm going to be, ta-da! And then you do it for a while and you're like, actually, I'm more of a ta-da!
Yeah.
And then you're like, I mean, as I do that, I'm more of a ta-da! And I feel like the past year of my life has been that. Like, hey guys, I'm a ta-da! And I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. I'm actually a ta-da! And I'm pretty sure my people are tired of me going, ta-da! How many times can you do it before people are like, listen?
Hey, let's find out. Well, we might find out.
We're going to push that boundary and see where we really land. People are like, okay, we're done. Sure. We're done with the ta-da. It's no longer interesting. Pick a lane and run with it. I mean, right?
It's a bold strategy. We'll see how it plays off. I think we're approaching an era, especially post-pandemic. I think we were already heading this direction anyways, but the single track career is no longer a thing. There is no such thing as going and working at a corporate company for 45 years and earning your watch and pension. Like,
yeah.
Maybe a small percentage of people might be sneaking into situations like that. But what's much more likely is that we're going to see these shifting careers and skills that didn't exist like in the duration of even the beginning of your career. So I think my journey is a pretty solid example of that, because none of this stuff existed when I was even in school or pursuing a career. So it wasn't even on the table. I think many other people, students that are going to school now, people that are entering the workforce in the current years, they're going to see multiple career shifts over their span. And it's just going to be normal. I think it's expect many more ta-das is ultimately where that's heading.
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, Wayne says 5 is your max for like ta-da. You can have 5. I feel like I may have already maxed out, so I don't know what happens after 5. I guess I'll figure out that next. That could be a problem. But I think, like, we talk about this all the time in education, is the future of education is we don't know the future of education. So thus the reason why we're no longer, or why we should not any longer be standing in front of the student saying, this is the way, walk in it, instead of but standing beside them and saying, let's construct what this is going to look like together. Because it could have been true, maybe more so when I was a kid, that my teachers or parents would stand in front of me and say, when you grow up, I want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, a this, or that. And that's much less likely now, because everything's shifting so quickly, and we've seen it just explode, especially with the pandemic, that how right are we going to be if we stand in front of them and say, I want you to be a doctor? Because even a doctor is shifting. Now they're having virtual care and all these types of things, which was unheard of prior to that, right? So I think it's just not smart of us to stand in front and say, this is exactly what it's going to be, what I'm going to be. And bringing that back to qualified versus unqualified, we're standing in front of us and saying, this is exactly what I have to do to be qualified in whatever it is you've decided to do. When in reality, like, there is no mountaintop. Disclaimer alert, or like spoiler, there is no qualification.
No, especially in cases where it's entirely new, 100% new. And we're seeing technologies only accelerating that. The social condition of our world at the moment accelerates that. So I think it's only reinforces the idea that we are creating our own journey. We're literally blazing our own trail, our own path. And there's ways that you can do that and learn and be educated and more qualified than, but in general, there's no official status or certification that we need to reach. So shifting that perspective, towards a journey-based mentality rather than a destination, huge win.
I love that. I mean, we talk about like process over product, when we're working with when we're working with learners, like we're focusing on what is the process that you're going through rather than the product that you're going through, which or going for, which is the same thing. Like, so if you were to take your job title now, minus the cult leader, because I don't know, but like the super producer person, what college degree would you need for that? Like, if you were to go and say, I should have this degree hanging on my wall, what is it? Or is there one?
So, as of right now, so this is where that convergence I was mentioning earlier actually is coming into play. When I was going to school, once upon a time, I wanted to be a journalist. Actually, I was pursuing journalism and like thought I was going to do like either like build out some type of media site or like investigative journalism stories around the world, and
That would be
just
awesome.
discovered what was under the hood in the media industry, and it was just for lack of a better word, a bit of a shit show. But essentially, I abandoned that and pursued communications and media management, which is kind of similar, but thankfully a little more practical. And essentially what that is understanding macro level communications. There's interpersonal, like one-on-one communication to master, but understanding how do humans communicate within an organization or to a public audience. That type of level of education definitely helps. Media management is a key piece of this. A lot of digital strategies are based around content and media. So reshaping or optimizing how you can manage that media as a communication tool is another lane. So communications degrees, anything kind of business marketing would be fairly practical for a couple years, and then it's probably going to be a whole new world by the time you learn all that. So there is some degrees that would be relevant, but for the most part, nothing is better than just getting in the mud and just getting dirty and learning it straight up. Like, it's hands down the best way to get anything going.
Sure. I mean, I agree. Like, one of my passions that I'm always pursuing is like organizational psychology. So organizational communication strategies and those types of things. And I use that a lot in my day-to-day work, like the stuff I actually get paid for. But that one to me seems more enduring, right? If I would have gone to school for organizational psychology 10 years ago, it's more likely that would have endured longer than if I would have gone to school for computer science, right, 10 years ago. So I do think there are things that have a longer lasting shelf life than other things. And in the world that you run in, like media and all those types of things, like the rate in which it's shifting and the rate in which it is still shifting is insane. Like, there's no way to keep up with that in a pre-built program. In my
100%, the most valuable skill that you can learn in today's world is how to learn on your own without any courses or guidance. And like there is great opportunities and context for mentorship and coaches and stuff, but for that piece you're alluding to, when stuff is evolving so quickly, it becomes on you to not only recognize what's changing and that it's changing. That's step A. But then after that, part B is, what do I do with that? What do I need to learn? What do I need to know in order to adapt to this change or leverage it to your advantage? Because a lot of people end up just assuming once they learn, get a certification or a degree of some sort, that like you're good. No longer the case.
No.
All about the lifelong learning, and there's, at least for me, there's never going to be a day where I'm stopping learning new things.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, like the ability to learn in an agile fashion is invaluable. But on top of that, the ability to unlearn is also completely
Ooh,
invaluable, right? So, I mean, you're learning these
yes.
things, but if you're learning new things on top of new things, but you're never unlearning the things that no longer fit, then, you're going to run into some issues there. So the ability to unlearn, I would say, is right there with the ability to learn.
So we're seeing this a lot in the tech space, the unlearning dilemma, or any industries that have very like archaic, like old
Mm-hmm.
school, like this is how it's done, like this is how it's always been done. Those
Education.
are though yes, though it's gonna be a struggle, because in order to absorb that new information, you either need to remove your old way of thinking or recalibrate it,
Right.
reshift it into a new lens. And lots of people don't want to do that, especially once you're
A lot of
ingrained,
work.
or it's habitual. So that recognition of needing to unlearn things is massive. There's
Yeah.
value in like prior application, but in general, that's why learning a new language is so difficult, because as an
Yeah.
adult, at least, because you consistently want to attach it back to your native language. It just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
you need to abandon grammar rules, like all the stuff that you thought you needed to follow, you need to get rid of. And it's not only as critical, I would say it's even more critical in some of these areas, because those prior strategies are no longer effective.
Right.
At least the first language you use, like it's still good, it's still the same. But
Right. Yeah.
if the technology you're trying to utilize, or the system you're trying to utilize, is outdated, where 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 are you going with this one? Like, good
Oh, and
luck.
like there's so many avenues that I would love to run down. I mean, there's the concept of like building neurological pathways and what it means to have to like intentionally pull them apart and build a new response if we're talking about how we're relating and communicating with others and with actions. But in a general sense, this idea of unlearning is a huge reason why I jumped into the things that I'm unqualified to do in like coaching, because in education, everything's always evolving as far as the information that we have. Like my degree is child development. So we're talking
Mhm.
about how their brains develop, how we can help their brains develop, how we can help their brains all work together and how we can support that, right? The behaviors and the practices we can put into that. But what I was running into is there's only so much information you can give and put in whatever word here, right? In my case, it was
Mhm.
educators. There's only so much educate or information you can give educators, new information, before at some point they're going to have to kind of disassemble previous stuff because it's not going to work. So then they're just overloaded with everything that they've learned over the past 20 years in education. And they're running into this, well, I'm supposed to respond this way, but in the past I've responded this way. And are these still both accurate? And you're hitting this wall of, I have so much, but I don't know which is more valuable than the other. And until you really stop and say, okay, what makes sense and what do I need to remove and replace, then you run into this like you can only handle so much new information before you have to take out old information. And that was a huge reason why I shifted, well, not really shifted, but kind of took on the additional role of coaching, was because now I work with people and say, kind of work through the same thing. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Does it still align? And are you making room for these new things? How are you unlearning essentially? Because I kept running into that as a trainer, as a speaker, as an educator, was there's only so much new you can give before you're going to have to unlearn something. You're going to run out of room.
Yep. Good old overload. I'm good at those. Information overload.
Same. I agree. And that was, but that's a skill set, right? The ability to say, is this action that I'm doing still serving me? That's definitely a skill set. Like for one, to be aware of it. And then for two, to know what to do with it and go, okay, it's not serving me. So now what? How do I replace this with something new? And I know that you run into this. I mean, because tech evolves way faster than education. So like, what are your strategies for when you run into that with someone and they're like, but I've always done it. This always worked. Or even this worked last week. I don't know why the algorithm shifted and now it hates me.
I mean, so there's a portion of it, a decent amount of it is understanding who you're working with when it comes to like a client basis. There's some situations where you like similar to personal relationships, like you just straight up like you cannot change this person. So it's not entirely on you to be able to change their perspective. You can give them the lanes, you can give them the data, you can give them
Yeah.
the better options and suggestions, but it's not on us to be able to literally convince them. They need to find that switch or whatever it is, that lens shift or whatever happens in our brain when it clicks. That has to happen on their own. We can't force that moment. And I think that's the most critical piece to start with, is recognizing, is this somebody that's even willing to adjust and change in the first place? And if they are, great, let's explore that journey in sort of like a mentorship type of setup. But if they're just ingrained in their habits and they're just gonna ride that train all the way into the wall, I don't see the need for you to jump on there with them.
I concur.
And in prior years, I may have not answered that the same way. I would just try and convince anybody to help anybody with anything. But there's just some people you have to have some level of social emotional awareness to recognize this person is simply unwilling to change, or perhaps has a subconscious reason they don't want to even change at all. So there's usually something way deeper, but if they're willing to change, pursue mentorship. If not, let them go.
Right. And I think,
Bye-bye.
I mean, that's the same for, we've talked before how, like, when you're a consumer, it's your responsibility to qualify who you're going to work with, right? And you get to choose, do these degrees, are them having degrees a requirement for me? Do I mind them not, right? It's your responsibility to qualify the person that you're working for. I also think it works back the other way, right? For you as you're working with clients, for me as I'm working with clients, you know, there's a reason that there's like a, whatever you want to call it, a discovery call or an introduction call or whatever, because you're both kind of vetting the other, like, because you're right. I've worked with clients in the past where it didn't last a long time, right? You get 2-3 weeks in and you're like, okay, like, I'm not going to burn with you. So if this is how you want to go, then, you know, you go. And I think if you pull that all back to, you know, in the marketing concept, and I don't know if this is still accurate, but in the past I've heard, you know, it takes a minimum of 8 touches before you start to see a marketing conversion. And you were talking about that. There's a reason, because you can't force a mindset shift on someone. If they need your service, they have to convince themselves of that. It's much easier that way than you trying to like force it on them, especially when it comes to something like coaching, or that's more mind work or whatever. It can be very challenging, and it's so much easier to, back to that co-constructivism, how can we come alongside them to get to their point instead of forcing them to get to our point?
Oh no, it's a critical piece that we're only going to see amplify. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like you can literally hand it to them on a silver platter, but that final step has to be on their end. So I anticipate we'll see more and more of that. Attention spans are shrinking and getting smaller, so that frequency that you were mentioning, that used to be like when I was in marketing school, it was like 6 or 7, then it was 8. Now I'm guessing it'll be probably 10 or 11. You need 10 or 11 impressions before you're sticking there, because it's far more saturated. There's way more crap out there getting thrown at our eyes and ears to absorb this, listen to this, now. So when we are making that impression, unless it's just like a super, super impactful piece of content or media, it has less impact each time. If it's just a 3-4 second scroll over and over, now you have to amplify the volume of those touch points in order to even stick out a little bit in the long run. And I anticipate the direction things are going with like TikTok style platforms taking off. Like that's only going to keep shrinking more and more until we're having like microsecond like pieces of content like flashed into our mind.
Right. I know it's gonna be like flash, scroll. It's gonna be intense. But I mean, you're not wrong. There's like, I think of people before I click the follow button on TikTok, right? I've seen their stuff pop up over and over and over on my feed, and I'm like, ooh, I should follow this person. But it's been, I've seen 6 or 7 posts from them before I click the follow button, because it could be a one-off, who knows? Or I'm just moving too fast, they don't pay attention. Wayne asks a question. Let's see.
Wayne, good old Wayne.
How are you changing your preparations for daily events versus big events? I feel like that's a Travis question. Because he used the word preparation, and we know that that's not really my forte.
Oh, love this. Wayne, so I'm assuming this might be in the context of streaming type of events. So daily events, thankfully I do not have daily stream events.
That sounds awful.
Would be difficult to keep up with. I am finally into daily posting, keeping up with that. But as far as events and streams, the 2 frequencies, or I guess considerations I have, are a weekly show, some type of recurring frequency in that context, and then more of like a quarterly or like a semi-annual event. Those I'm starting to steer more towards virtual event platforms. So the media cycle I'm starting to see as a really good rhythm is have your weekly show, your primary show, exactly like we're doing here, as your high frequency community building thing. It's the same time, very consistent, similar theme. You can essentially carve out your lane there as your primary media pillar. And then for the larger events, those are ones that I plan for months, and you need a decent amount of promo. If you're investing into a virtual event, they are typically more expensive than like stream setups and just firing something up in your room or in your studio. So those require several weeks of getting the brand together, getting everything booked, and at least I'd say like 2 to 4 weeks of promo for the big events. And then these weekly ones are just in a promo cycle. So if the show's on Thursday, I essentially start the next cycle on Fridays and have a checklist I've gone through before that essentially lays out what needs to be done each day, and essentially just puts you on autopilot for a good rhythm of getting into things. And then daily events, we'll catch that one another time, because I ain't there yet. I can barely get a little LinkedIn post up every day. But props to those the Twitch streamers and all the tryhards that can somehow stream every day. Because no thanks.
I can't even put my makeup on every day, so I don't know how that would. There's no way that would work. It's too much effort. I mean, like I love. Hey, you want to know something fun? Speaking about being unqualified, my shirt is on backwards. So.
This is what it's all about,
really
folks.
High on my neck, like what is happening? Oh, it's backwards.
Give me a slow clap. Let's start the slow clap here in the chat, folks. Oh man!
Listen, I am nothing if not consistently unqualified and an issue. Like
brand consistency.
That's right.
Gotta give
There's a reason my brands are what could go wrong and unqualified. Okay, there is a darn reason.
Oh, I love it.
So that's important. Adam says, "How do unqualified people qualify potential clients?" I mean, I've done a little bit of all things. Honestly, my biggest form of qualification for potential clients is if like they've lasted through my content, right? They've seen me put my shirt on backwards, like they've seen the gifts of myself, they've seen like the snarkiness in my comments, they've seen all of that. And that's kind of my qualification process, if you will. Because if they're still reaching out to me after my content, which is, you know, a completely authentic and shenanigan based, then they've qualified themselves a little bit, right? Like I filtered out some of the other ones. I mean, that's my like overall thought. I don't know. What about you, Travis?
I'm getting better at this. So for a long while, when I was in the agency realm as a creative director, I dug myself into a very deep hole over the years by helping anybody in any industry with any service at almost any time of the day. And did that for a while in kind of this very like people pleaser, like superhero mentality of I can do it all, whatever. And in hindsight, I have no idea what I was doing. I'm grateful for it. I'm glad I took that journey and I was able to learn the ropes of everything digital marketing, top to bottom. But what really is the process for me when approaching a client situation or anybody that in most cases now they're coming to me, which is also another very different change compared to desperately sending DMs and cold outreach emails and cold calls. So that was the biggest change, was switching from outbound strategy to inbound strategy. And then within that inbound strategy, the biggest qualification for me is understanding what is the true purpose of this. A lot of people see like, oh, everybody has a podcast. I love Joe Rogan and this and that. I should start a podcast. And they're like, okay, well, that's great. But what is the true purpose of this? Is this to build your business? Is this to build your brand? Is it to do both? That key strategy. Yeah, that can be a strategy. But as long as they're clear about it at the start is the key point that I'm looking for is, are we on the same page for where this is heading? What are your goals? Am I the right person to plug into those goals and convert those ideas you have into reality? And that's essentially my qualification. I don't have any hard metrics or this or that that literally qualify people. For me, it's much more of a vibe thing. If we're vibing, like there's a high probability we'll find a way to work. And more frequently than not, a lot of my business relationships either start in the community, they're followers in the community, or start watching streams and shows. And there's ongoing rapport built of asking questions, and I'll help out people in little one-off situations. And then they want to fire up an official show or whatever. And then I can step in and I already know, I'm confident that they are a viable candidate. We're vibing. They're on a good trajectory. They know what's up. So that's what I look for is vibes and their clarity on what they want out of this project.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. And I think, so many people downplay this concept of vibing, the other one, but it's so true, especially with coaching, where I'm hanging out with people, on whatever schedule, but at least weekly for a period of time. Like if we don't mesh, you're not going to want to work with me and I'm not going to want to work with you. And I've had a conversation in the past with one of my mentors in this space, is like, if you're just going to get on the phone and talk with people for an hour at a time that you don't like, you might as well just go work for someone else. Like, why are you doing this?
I can barely talk on the phone with people I do like. So.
I know, like that. I mean, and that was a good reminder for me. Like, if I just wanted to get on the phone and talk with people that I didn't like for an hour, I might as well go and work for someone else. Like, why would I do that to myself in the space where I can just say, no, thank you, or this isn't really working? And that goes back to qualifying goes both directions. I think it goes for the consumer and then for the provider, whatever the service is that you're providing. It has to go both ways.
Amen.
So
I'm checking in on this. our adventurous chat here.
Did you check on Jackie yet? She might have left. She's like, no, this isn't. I can't hang out with you.
I'm like double LinkedIning over here.
I have like, there's a chat here, there's a LinkedIn here, I have Twitch over there, like then like my real job, my email is here. Like if I didn't have ADHD, would I be able to do this? This is the real question. How do people who don't have ADHD manage this situation? Legit question. Ready, set, go.
Well, I don't know. You might be asking the wrong person, but because it's chaos over here every time I fire up a stream. No matter how much prep goes into it, it's just a different adventure every time I click the go live button. So, nope, slowly getting better at systemizing, optimizing that, but. Yeah, we'll love the process there because I'm not sure where or if there's a destination on that one. So take a little bit of our own medicine.
Yeah. What's up, Thomas?
Yo, yeah, we got a lot of people hopping in.
Yeah, and Adam, I agree that ADHD needs chaos. I do way better when there's 27 things. I mean, you can see all my Post-it notes like up here, like this is how I live my life. So it's fine. I can do things. So the original post that we talked about when I first brought up this was from this sign that someone gave me, and they told me I couldn't. That's why I did. Right. So that's what we were talking about in this. And that was what I posted about our conversation. That's where I started. And then as I was thinking about it, you know, that almost puts you as a like a response, because almost. What's the word that I'm looking for? When someone does something to you and you're going to get back at them. What's that word?
Reaction, revenge.
Nope. Revenge. Revenge.
I like depends on the context.
Revenge feels very like I'm going to do this for me. But in reality, if you're honest with yourself, revenge is a reaction, and it's all about the other person. Like you're giving your power back to that other person as you respond from a revenge state, because you're not responding from a empowered state. You're responding to their power or your perceived lack of power. So revenge is not quite as like holy as people make it out to be, like, I'm going to get revenge on that person, right? When really you're still responding to them. You're still making choices dependent on that other person. So like, I both love and hate this sign. Someone gave it to me and I love it because it's accurate, right? Like I am very much a boundary pusher. And because of the way a lot of the things that I was raised in, I always lived inside of very specific boundaries, and you know, it ended up leading me to a lot of anxiety, depression, those types of things, right? And now I'm like, boundaries, I'm just going to burn it. Like, we're just going to burn it down and start over. I was forget that, right? But as I was thinking about it when I was writing, it really shifts to now for me and where I am, it's less they told me I couldn't, and that's why I did. It's more I told me I couldn't, and that's why I did. Because then I'm listening to, the more that I kind of zoned out the they, and I have zoned out over the past year of my life, you know, 97% of the people that were in my life prior, right? It's just like, so good. But what you're left with is your own self-limiting beliefs and your own self-talk, which can be harder to manage and to deal with than the theys of the world, because you know, when they speak, you know that it's happening and you can respond to it. But when you're speaking to yourself, it's just your daily language. So now I'm having to focus more on, I told me I couldn't. That's why I did. And instead of responding to other people and reacting, I'm responding to my own self and reacting that way. And we're like, forget that, Chelsea. I don't know who you think you're talking to. We're going to do it now. Like every time I think I probably couldn't do that. Oh no, we're doing it now. So like, I don't know, how does that kind of play into your life? Like other people unqualifying you before you unqualify yourself? Or do you unqualify yourself before the other people unqualify you? Or like, give us a peek into Travis's bald head.
Oh man, it's it's an adventure under here. But I've actually been on both sides of this spectrum now, of this equation. So this will be interesting to explore, because for a long while growing up in sort of, I guess, my first era into of success in the digital realm was very inverted. It was heavily based on what are other people's reactions and what are other people saying about this. So I was writing and producing music in my bedroom, which was very like self-conscious, like, oh my God, I hate my voice. Like, oh my God, this, that, all of those like deep, like internal self-sabotage fears. But when you put it out there, there's obviously some people that have negative feedback, whatever. That's expected. Welcome to the internet.
Happy internet.
But what is actually more valuable, if you are already having the self-sabotage dilemmas, find a way to use other people's objective feedback and their objective perspective in a way to essentially recalibrate your internal thoughts. A lot of what we see and we think is amplified for negativity. The stuff that we say in our thoughts is often brutal, like very like rude, like maybe at least my own self-sabotage talk.
For
like,
sure.
Damn,
like
bro,
I would never
that
say
was
that.
Savage.
I mean, my coach is like, would you say that to another human besides yourself? I'm like, no.
So that's a brilliant example. So when you're hitting those moments of self-sabotage or negative self-talk, recognize that moment and ask, would I say this to a family member or a friend? And if no, then you should. Member. It's unlikely. I mean, some might need it, but in most cases, that's a good signal to give you a little bit of a reality check, because for a while, that's what I needed and used to recalibrate my thoughts. And the negative side of this is, if you have something or someone you really trust and you embed that trust into them, if you lose their approval, suddenly all of that confidence and that inspiration just disappears. And that's what happened to me with music. I had a woman that I absolutely was convinced she was the one. We're getting married. We're doing this. Everything went south. We are not doing this. Got very messy, very dirty, and got to the point of like, you're a filthy piece of you'll never make it in music. You're worthless. Your voice sucks. You do just all of the, you pull out the worst cards you have in a breakup. And it just crumbled my musical spirit, my musical everything. Was like right when I was getting out in the real world post college, like, let's do this. So awful timing for something like that to hit, because it was heavily anchored on someone else's opinion. So for a long while, I had to essentially rebuild that from scratch, from zero. And now it's 100% internal, where I've almost gone the opposite direction of like, 35 people could come in here and say this sucks. And I'd be like, well, I'm having fun, so suck it. I'm like, maybe there's a little bit of a threshold there to navigate. But when you have gone through that experience, and I've been now on both sides of it, where it's 100% reliant on the external feedback, to now the opposite, is finding that healthy middle ground. What is the level of self-awareness you can have, self-respect, self-care, self-love to continue developing without being just a straight up like narcissist or like this. So it's finding that balance, because when you skew too far the other direction, where you need that feedback, and a lot of people do this with social media, they get pulled down this rabbit hole of they need the likes, they need the comments, just need a little bit more, just a little bit more dopamine, just like one more hit. It's these little drip feeds, and if you're recognizing those signals, start figuring out why are you looking for that approval. And what is it for? Where is it coming from? Because very often we simply are looking for a place to belong. in a community, a family, any type of digital realm, that's getting more difficult to connect. So that's what I think it can become a signal when that sabotage and that self-talk comes in, just to start looking deeper, start asking why is this popping up, and what am I looking for here? In most cases, you're simply looking for love, belonging, or approval of some sort.
I love that. And I love that there can be too far one way, too far the other way, somewhere in the middle, and it's not defined, right? I can't go to you and say, Travis, the best way for you to experience, consistent self-love and self-compassion is to have two important people in your life that validate you, and then your own validation and this and that. There's no formula for it, right? And I think when you're allowing people to speak into your life, you get to choose who those people are, right? Because there are maybe two people who could come into this room and be like, Chelsea, this is really awful. And I'd be like, why? Like, which part of it? Which part is really awful? But then the whole rest of the universe could come in here and be like, this is really awful. You know what I would do? I would do this. I just be like,
look at my backwards.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Here. Okay. That's what I got. Like, right? I mean, you have to have some sort of, because I also think having those important people that you allow feedback from kind of balances you out, because you can go way far the other way and you're like, this is amazing. Everything's perfect. And, the trusted person would be like, is it? Like, is it like maybe this piece could be tweaked,
Especially when it's if it's people you truly trust and they have your good intentions in their world. Mm-hmm. This can become a critical thing because so many people we live in our own world, our own heads, even literally the way we hear our voice is different than how the other world hears it and sees us. So this is an exercise I've seen people do when they start streaming or public speaking or podcasting or anything. A public speaking coach will get you to describe your voice as an individual, subjectively. It's monotone, it's kind of boring, it's basic, I don't know. And then you go and ask somebody else. Go ask your mom and your best friend and your coworker what they hear and how they would describe your voice. And they go, oh, it's warm, it's friendly, kind of inviting, kind of cute, kind of like whatever. And it's all this stuff that you would never say or think of, because not only are you literally hearing a different version in our skull, there's like the whole biology science of that,
right?
But we have our own interpretations of that, of the ums and uhs. Oh, I say that too often. So anytime I go back and look at a video, I'm like, oh, there he is again, wasting all that airspace with ums and uhs. But I continuously get people to say, like, bro, you did so great on camera. Your voice, your presence has been awesome. And like, if I was only listening to me, then I'd still be stuck on, man, I said, like 7 times that. Like, so those external perspectives from people you trust can just reshift your world in a brilliant way, in the right context.
Yeah. And that has been like my coach for me, right? In this past 12 months or so, where I've really been taking apart my life and rebuilding it in a different way. I've needed that kind of helping of that external compass point, or even just to be able to, the ability to ask me clarifying questions, that type of thing has been really important to kind of throw off my thinking. But I was having this conversation with a close friend recently about, I feel like you see things in me that I don't see in myself. And you kind of, a mirror, you kind of mirror myself back to me, but then also show me more detail than I would have seen. And so I think that's a good analogy of what you're kind of looking for, right? You're looking for someone who, if you're asking someone, what do you see when you see me? And they say something completely different that has absolutely like no basis in how you feel or what you experience, then they're probably wrong. It's very unlikely that they are seeing the truth and you're seeing something completely inaccurate, right? But if they're saying, I see these things and it almost completely aligns with what you experience. And then they might throw in another level of depth, like with speaking. I see that you speak in a very caring way. You build space for the people that you're speaking with. Isn't that really cool? They're adding detail to the reflection that they are already showing of back to you of what you already kind of felt. And so I think that level of depth or detail, you don't always see that in yourself. So it's like you need those people that you trust and value, that to call out those deeper things that you may not see in yourself, because you may have never gone, like someone told me that I do a really good job of holding space for other people in a conversation, especially if they're sharing really deep things, like in my coaching work, which I never would have noticed. It was just a way that I did things. And until someone intentionally called that out in me, reflecting back to me, I was like, really? Well, that's interesting. And that kind of started my conversation towards coaching. So having those people who see you and then a couple layers deeper and can kind of call that out is huge.
100%. 100%. I think so much of this is us controlling our social environment. So ultimately, we're never going to be 100% isolated unless you're just like full on, like in the woods, off the grid, libertarian, like not paying taxes, like off the grid style thing. Like you're a part of society. We are social creatures by default. All of the things we worry about and think about and do and panic, all of those are because of social signals and
Right.
things innate to us. So rather than trying to suppress those feelings or change those feelings, it's about recognition. Recognize what needs to happen here, and what can we control. And in most cases, it's controlling who is around us. If we are getting that negative feedback continuously, and it's not in a constructive form, this is toxic energy. It's we see it in other mammals and other things. They're called parasites in biology, where it's a one-way thing. They're sucking energy from you, or time or money or whatever it is. What we need to be doing is finding symbiosis, finding symbiotic relationships where what I bring to the table enhances what you bring to the table, which then in turn makes me a little bit better, which makes you a little bit better. Like that's the environment we want to be in continuously, is find those people that we can build symbiotic relationships with. And they don't even have to be business partners. You can be in parallel journeys. There's some brilliant people like Luke Matthews, killing it in his own lane. We still haven't officially found a way to work together, be business partners or anything, but being in parallel lanes and on the journey with one another helps share that experience. So think of who those people are. Who are the people that want you to win, and who can you help win? Help them win, I guess, is the equation that we all should be figuring out. And when you can hit both ends of those, like,
oh my gosh,
boom, off to the races.
It's amazing. It's an amazing thing that just propels both of you forward, and being able to celebrate others' wins and accomplishments and those types of things, like from a real space, instead of going, I wish that I had that. But like honestly being able to say, holy crap, you are freaking killing it, is a whole different experience. Like, forget them. It's amazing for me.
Yes. No, that is a huge psychological shift, even though it sounds kind of small. One of the biggest things that reduced my anxiety in this realm is, like, I grew up extremely competitive, like threw on my first pair of hockey skates like age 4, rode that all the way up to college hockey. So like my entire brain is embedded in, how can I do this better? How can I win? And how can I kick your ass? And it's taken a while in the business context. For a while, I used to have the what's considered the scarcity mindset of if somebody else is winning or succeeding, that it's taking away from me, or it means less of me. And that is so far from the truth. And not only far from the truth, it's detrimental to your career and your
Oh,
life
for
and your
sure.
business.
Yeah.
So I've lived in that for a while with my kind of my first dip into entrepreneurship, and struggled and wondered why. Like, oh, because I wasn't pursuing business partners, I wasn't pursuing collaborations. That type of stuff can really be a game changer in the long run. So think of how you can reshape your perspective towards an abundance mentality that leads to those symbiotic relationships, or that the good old synergy. If you're building business relationships, it's not a meeting unless you're chatting synergy.
It's true story. It's true. That's true story.
So those are key pieces, I think, for the adventure to figure out.
Yeah. And I think that's so true, because when you start like celebrating their wins, and that you build this opportunity to learn from them instead of just trying to catch them. Right? I mean, that's two different places. It's like, if I see you, how many LinkedIn followers do you have? 30K, something like that?
Yes, indeed.
All right. I'm at like 888, something like that, right? So if I saw what you had as, crap, I've got to catch Travis. Like, how fast can I get from here to there so I can match what he's doing? Then how limited is my ability to learn from you? I'm just trying to catch you. And I've kind of shut off that part of my brain that goes, Travis must be doing something really cool. I wonder what I can learn from. Like, what a different shift in that. And where I've really seen that is with Jennifer Brick, right? Her and I connected with Snark Squad and, all those types of things. And I remember when her and Kevin messaged me and they're like, hey, you want to do this with us? I was like, I'm sorry, what was your name? Like, what? Who are you? I don't understand what's happening. And then, the rest is history, and here we are. But she recently hit like 40K subs on her YouTube channel. I mean, she's freaking killing it. She has other stuff that, is happening in the background. Like, and I freaking love and adore her. I have 41 subscribers on my YouTube channel, y'all. But I am so freaking excited for her 40K. And it's such a good place for me to be, to not look at that and be like, damn, like, look what she has that I don't have, but instead be able to go, holy crap, friend, look at what you're freaking doing. And it puts me in a different place.
No, it leads, and especially knowing, it's even better if you know the context and them personally versus attaching them. Like I used to put like Lewis Howes like up on this like pedestal, like until you meet them, they're just a human. The most normal, straight up dude ever. And all of these people that we've built up in our heads as celebrities or big, huge CEOs are just normal as hell and very unqualified.
Yes.
Like a lot of people, that's the more I see, like even without, I got no need to throw anybody under the bus, but over and over and over, I step into client situations or like enterprise level businesses and see what's going on under the hood. And I'm like, how are you making money and not everybody has quit? Like, this is a disaster. And they're making millions a year. And I'm like, wow. And we'll see it over and over and over. And it leads perfectly into this self qualification that we give or don't give ourselves. And ultimately it's irrelevant. It's redundant. There's no such thing as being officially qualified. All there is learning from yourself, learning from others. And I think the most accurate way to approach this is thinking in the context of like a court system considers an expert somebody that just knows more than the other people in the room. They don't have to have a certified degree. They don't have to have a psychological research or years of experience on this. It just has to be deemed that they know more than most of the people in the room. And that holds up in a court of law. So why do we assume that we need this certification, this degree, this amount of years, this amount of education in order to do that? That formula doesn't exist. What's far more valuable is either starting that journey, just learning all of those on your own, or finding that expert or quote unquote expert in this journey, because this is what I'm discovering as people are following me in my streaming. I couldn't even open up Zoom at the beginning of 2020. We were trying to figure out like Zoom meetings and like get people in there. People were coming in with their cameras sideways, like all this stuff. And now, less than a year later, people are asking me to run like 5 and 6 figure like virtual events. And I'm like,
yeah, like
you
who? Me? Wait, where?
And all it is I'm a couple steps ahead of people, thinking of it in a like a video game context. If we were both playing the same video game and there's 10 levels to the game and you're stuck on level 1 and I'm on level 2, is there any difference if you're trying to get through level 1 between me being on level 2 or level 9? Not at all. I've been through level 1. I can help you with that. Boom, you're good to go. I'm not miles ahead of you. I haven't established a book and a course and a program and a this and that to be able to share that with you. I've just been a couple steps ahead and can share what I've learned along the way. That's all I've been doing the last year and a half, and everybody keeps thinking like, "Hey, he's the guy. He's the guy."
I mean, it's all over LinkedIn. It was like live stream. Oh yeah, Travis. Travis does the things. Like Travis is the person. Like we've linked your name together. Travis live stream. Travis live stream. Which is so funny. And I'm just all for it. I'm like completely go and do that. And that's when I first started doing the coaching thing, I was like, I can't do this. I'm not qualified to do this. And my mentors were like, all you need to do is be one chapter ahead of you in your story, like, and be able to kind of reach back into that chapter that you were just in and help them walk through it and move forward, to not say that you've finished your book, but that you're one chapter ahead. So very similar to what you were saying. And like something funny before we, wrap up was when I first started, this was June of, not this past June, but the June before that, right after the world went into chaos, was when I first started on LinkedIn. And I somehow got wrapped up in the Luke world of all the things. And then I was in the VIP, the Vipers situation. And then there were group chats and I'm getting like thrown into all these things. And at this time, right, I had like 600 people on LinkedIn. And I'm looking at Luke as like the holy grail of like LinkedIn. He had like 30,000 something. And I'm like, oh my God, he's like royalty of LinkedIn. It's like magical things. He's a wizard of all LinkedIn, right? And then I met him. I was like, oh, never mind. So I think it's like you were saying, it's important that we're constantly unqualifying the people that we've overqualified in our head, right? I mean, because most likely whoever you're looking up to is amazing, but they're most definitely less qualified than you put them on the pedestal to be.
I've seen it over and over and over. The more I move up the food chain of the A-listers and celebrities, like same thing. Just a mess under the hood. We all barely have any idea what we're doing. We're really good at changing that perspective on social media, myself included. I look people continuously say like, "Oh yeah, he's great. You must be so cool." I'm like, still doing the same nerdy stuff and sitting alone in my bedroom. So nothing really changed here other than
I just have cool
other
lighting
people's
now behind me. I don't know.
Yes. Oh man. No, you want to see how unqualified I am? This is how unqualified I am. Without all my cool lighting, I look like a serial killer hanging in the dark.
That's terrifying. Like, just turn it back on, because it's messing with my whole perception of who you are. And I'm not ready to tear that down in my head yet. Like, I need Travis to live in a certain way in my brain. That's really important for me. So, like Alfonso says, I want to be like you guys, but my superiors just see me as a computer guy. Nerds unite. Okay?
This is exactly what we're talking about. We have no idea what we're doing. Join the party, Alfonso. We'll send the analytics report back to
I mean, I love finding other nerds. Like for one of my other projects that I'm working with, I built, have you heard of or messed with Topia.io? It's very similar to like Gather Town or some of those other ones. I think Kelsey uses one, her platform.
Remo?
Like,
The
yes,
virtual
it's
event
like that.
platforms?
It's kind of like that. And where you can walk closer to each other and, you know, build the rooms and build the space. Anyway, I built it out for a project that I'm doing. And as I'm meeting with people, I'm saying like, hey, we've built out this space for you to use. And it's always funny because if I'm on a Zoom with like several leaders in the school district or whatever, you can always catch the super nerdy ones. Because if you'll say, we're going to meet in this place and you'll have your own avatar and you'll be able to walk through the space, kind of like a video game, you'll see them go like, oh.
Yes.
And I'm like,
ooh, let me go pick my custom avatar. I'm going to switch the colors.
Right? Like, this is how I find my people at this point.
No, perfect. I mean, and that actually leads to real quick Wayne's question. He was asking, where do you think you'll be in 5 years? And this is a difficult one to answer in general because who knows what will even be happening 5 months from now. For me, it actually leads towards exactly what you were just mentioning, these virtual events. We've reached a point in digital community or digital society or whatever, where it is now not only normal to connect digitally. In years moving forward, it's going to be more common than in person. So that's where a lot of my investment is. After I saw the value of streams like Feel Good Friday, was solely for giving a place that people a place to connect virtually. So that's where my sights are set in the next 3 to 5 years is continuing to double down on how can I help people convert ideas into reality, whether it's shows or streams or anything in that realm. I'll keep that rolling, but the opportunity I see cracking open is going to be these virtual events and metaverse theories. It sounds silly now, but we're gonna be there. We're already halfway there with those virtual events you were mentioning. But I'm obsessed with world building. In the musical context, I love building and bringing people into a world. And now I've done the same with streaming, with the music, the lighting, and this and that. So for me, I am actually ecstatic to be able to literally digitally create the worlds in my head and be able to bring other people to them. That's what I'm going to have my sights set on in the next 3 to 5 years or so, Wayne.
I love that. And I think like the nerd, like I'm a nerd. I'm fine with it. I was building, computers by the time I was like 7.
Yes!
My dad that was my like bonus when I spend weekends with my dad. He's like, do you want to go to Fry's and buy the next part for your computer? And I was like, yes. I picked out a fan for my computer and I know what I want. Like that was what I was doing on the weekends was that, right? And it wasn't, it turns out we rule the world. So I don't know. But all these concepts of metaverse and all these things, like the little nerds inside of all of us are just so freaking excited.
I am. No, I know I definitely am. It's a very introvert friendly and also tech. Yeah, the tech side of it. I'm just obsessed with the technology of like all that you can do with these tools. That's all that technology is. It's a palette for us to create, to connect, to communicate, and that palette is expanding quickly. I'm excited. I'm ready to nerd out. Maybe I'll do these physical, real person events one day. I got to get back to like music festival or something, but. For the most part, maybe every once in a while I'll throw one of those in. But for the most part, I think this digital realm of digitally connecting is where it's at. And I think to loop it back to qualifications, ultimately the biggest thing that's shifted and changed in my life is the number and the quality of relationships. And I was able to do that digitally, 100% virtually. I'm still literally in the same room I was at the beginning of 2020 when I was entrepreneurially unemployed and not making anything, and had no idea what direction things were going. So there is an unrivaled opportunity here for people to tap into this digital space and qualify your own damn self, because you're already qualified to do whatever you're considering.
Okay. Well, on that note, I have a whole thing that I wasn't going to like announce today, but since we're here, I'm going to announce it. And because I'm throwing Travis into it, I'm going to kick him out so he can't talk, but he only can hear and watch. And I'm going to tell you people.
All right. So, I'm going to join in the chat with y'all then.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us, Travis. I'm going to kick you out so you can't participate in it. And then
you know what?
It's going to be...
I'm leaving. Bye.
You just left me. Okay, so it kind of works out that I'm wearing my backwards cheetah shirt today. Hold please. If you missed it, I'm wearing my shirt backwards. So that's why we are unqualified. But so I've had this thing kind of brewing in the back of my brain for a while that I wanted to do. And I kept kind of putting it off. But then Travis just gave his whole motivational speech about whatever you're thinking about doing, like do it, and the quality of digital communities. So what I'm planning, like I started writing it in my little journal last night of what I was going to do and scoping it out. And I'm building a virtual world inside of that place that I was talking about earlier called Topia. And it'll be a community of people who are kind of doing very similar things to what I'm doing, like burning down things that don't fit, finding new things that fit, taking on challenges, walking in their own empowerment, and all those types of things. And inside of the community, we're going to do book clubs and things like that. So the book club that we're going to launch with is a book called Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which has been life-changing for me. Okay, guys, girls, I don't care what you are, what you identify as, read it. It's amazing. But we're going to launch the community, have it open for people to come and be a part of. And then we're going to do like these one-off book clubs and kind of have breakout pieces that could lead to, if you decide to do coaching with me, if you just want to be a part of the community, if you just want to do the book club, if you want to do all three, this is what we're going to do. And the cheetah print goes with the shirt. She talks about people who are kind of taking power over their own lives as being like a cheetah and running after it and doing it. Just read the book. It's totally perfect. So I want this to be amazing. It's going to launch in January. And since Travis is like hanging out with me and knows all these things and we're using the same words, I'm probably going to pull him into that life with me and like get his expertise to be like, hey, help me do these things with all your smart things, because I want it to be amazing. And because I know that my life has been dramatically impacted by the digital community that's kind of I've built over this past year or so. And I want to continue that process and that flow. And I want it to be done really well. So Travis, yay! I'm going to wrap you into this what could go wrong shenanigan with your cult leader, super producer-ish. And so just keep watching out for things, because I'm sure Travis is going to, tell me how I'm supposed to promo and what I'm supposed to do for the things and all the stuff for the launch in January. So if you don't have the book, buy the book, read it. Even if you're not going to do the book club, it's amazing. It will change your life. Thank you so much for hanging out on Unqualified today. I'm back next week with actually my coach. She's coming on to hang out and talk about what it's been like to coach me and how to be qualified and unqualified and walk in your own confidence and your own power. So that should definitely be interesting. You might learn a thing or two about Chelsea, what could go wrong with bringing on my coach. It'll be fine. But thanks again to Travis for hanging out, and I will see all of y'all